Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Letting Go of Her podcast. Um, the Lord has really been speaking to me lately, or as of lately, which I am like all for it because I'm like, Lord, help either change my heart or remove some bitterness or forgive others or what do I have to do to get closer to you, right? And he's really been putting in the work. He's really been showing me like ways where it's like, hey, you got to get this together, or you got to change this, or you got to do that, right? So I am forever grateful. Also grateful that he is answering my prayers during this slow season. I don't want to say we're necessarily slow. At the warehouse, we're back to like what our normal daily average is. And we're probably going to be here for the next like 2, 3 ish weeks because the next Pokemon release drop date is May 22nd. So once that happens, it's going to be a little bit of chaos for a couple of weeks. So we're honestly enjoying just like the slow time. I'm catching up on getting like just errands that I've been needing to run that I just haven't had the energy for. Like all my returns. um, I am a very like, oh, let me buy it and let me buy it in every size possible to see which one like fits or, which one I need. And then whatever I don't need, I'll just return it later. And I get that habit from my husband. Actually, my husband's the one who initiated this habit because I forget when or how it started, but I'd be like, oh, I don't know. I think it was like trying to get something for my daughter when she was a baby. And I'm like, I don't know what size I want, or I don't know what color, I don't know, whatever. And he's just like, just buy all of them and then pick which one you want and then return the next. And sorry if that's a bad habit to have. um, but anyways, I finally was able to do most of my returns. And I love that Target now does like drive up returns, right? Because I went to go pick up a drive up. Whenever I have birthday parties, like I'm going to get you a gift from Target because I don't have the energy or the time to go anywhere else but Target. And Target does drive up. And so whatever I find at Target, I'm going to go and pick it up at the drive up. So yeah, so I went to go pick up a birthday present, and then I went to go do some returns, and it was just marvelous. And then through Walmart, I can return things through FedEx, which is perfect because I go to FedEx every day, and so I just stuffed the things back in a box and went over, scanned the QR code, they put on a label, and there you go. I already got the text that my refund is on its way. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, or if you don't, my Instagram handle, it's called It's a Maria A. So ITSAMIREYA. But if you follow my Instagram, you saw that I recently got a puppy. Well, he's still a puppy in technical terms because he's only 5 months old, which is still very puppy age. But he is a 40-pound English bulldog puppy. He is a huge little chunk of a man, my little sack of potatoes, which is what I call him. And we got him last week, and he's been in our home for a week now. And to be honest, like about half of the time, I even forget that we have a dog because he'll just be laying there sleeping. It's not until I either one, like smell his farts, or two, hear him snoring that I'm like, oh, wait, there's a dog. And then the other time, he's like outside or he's sitting or laying right there next to me on the floor in the kitchen. He's just a very Velcro dog. Oh, speaking of which, hello, doggy. And our English bulldog, his name is Winston. And honestly, we had been wanting a dog for a while. Like I wanted one, the kids wanted one. If you guys hear the snorting sounds, it's my dog. um, and my husband was very like, no, 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 And so we were gonna get a French bulldog, but that didn't end up working out because of, I don't know, I don't want to say scheduling differences, but I don't know, just some sort of misunderstanding. And then I was trying to convince my husband to get me a wiener dog because I see like dachshunds and I'm like, these are so cute. Like they're just little short, little skinny little wiener dogs. And I was like, I really, really want one. But I wanted one of the like hairy ones, which my husband was very against. He's like, no, we're not getting a hairy one. If we get a dachshund, it's got to be like the short haired one. So, anyways, we were looking around and we finally found some. Until one day, my husband shows me a picture of this bulldog, and he's just like, they're available now. We can go pick it up. And he knows the way to my heart, because for the longest time ever, I feel like I always told my husband, like, my two dream dogs is one, a giant fat like English bulldog, or two, I want a Saint Bernard, or a golden retriever, like one or the other. I can't have both. But either a Saint Bernard or a golden retriever. But I also want a big fat bulldog. And so he showed me the picture, and like that was it. It was game over. I was like, no, I'm sorry. Sorry, little wiener dog, but I'm gonna get myself my big fat bulldog. And I did. And he has been honestly like the best addition to our family. Look, right now he just came in here, said hello, and now he's laying on the couch because that was just way too much energy for him to use. But because he is like a little bit of a older puppy, he did come kennel trained and he did come potty trained. So that has been like a huge help, because one of my fears was like, how am I supposed to train a dog if like we're kind of almost never home, right? But Winston, he has been to the warehouse with us. Winston at the warehouse, and he just literally lays there and chills. And sometimes I'll catch him, biting the corners of the cardboard boxes, and I'm like, no, don't do that. But other than that, he's just been a huge blessing. I feel that God, didn't allow these other dogs to work out, because he was going to send us the perfect dog to fit our family, and he did. And now I have my big fat very stinky English bulldog that I love, my husband loves, and the kids absolutely adore. So that's just a tiny update of what's been going on in our home, in our household. We are enjoying these next couple of weeks of slow season, enjoying the time with our dog, and just ready for the next chaos. Although I am grateful that this next chaos is going to happen right before the kids are done with school, right after my daughter's like project, end of the school year project is done, as well as after I'm done with the mom's ministry and the women's ministry at my church. So it all just kind of worked out, and I'm grateful for that. But this week, I think I mentioned it last week, but I did want to talk about my anxiety, and where it is now, and how the Lord has just kind of transformed that whole part of my life, because it was a huge deal for many years, and honestly like a bigger deal than I needed to make it. So a while ago, maybe like a year ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, a friend of mine sent me a sermon by John MacArthur. um and I believe, because I think I heard it on a different podcast, but I believe that this sermon, or he spoke at a podcast or something that like had to do with this sermon, but um it went viral because he said the words, mental illness does not exist. And that was literally like the only part of the entire sermon that went viral, right? It wasn't like well, what did he mean by that? It was just like, oh, this Christian pastor, theologist, whatever, whatever titles he has, um, said mental illness is not real. And, and then insert like every bad thing, basically giving like Christians a bad name and how Christians don't believe in mental health and all this stuff, without actually listening to the entire sermon. So I listened to it, and honestly I probably should listen to it again, but there were some very big like key points that I got from it that have stayed with me. And there are like things that I constantly remind myself when I feel that I'm going to go into some sort of anxious spiral. And so the Lord has really just been showing me that, and the Lord has truly been showing me like, hey, it was never what you thought it was. It was actually this, or it was actually that. Um, and I've been very grateful that I am at this point now where I can see like the works that the Lord was doing in my life, as opposed to like being in the middle of it and like having absolutely no idea as to how this was going to turn out. But so one of the main things that stuck out to me, sorry, from this sermon was, so he was stating how mental illness does not exist. So all these diagnoses over like PTSD and anxiety disorders and depression and everything else, they don't exist. It's actually people's inability to cope with life. So they, their body goes haywire, their nervous system goes crazy. until it starts to just kind of like erupt in all of these symptoms and all of these thoughts and all of these compulsions and all of these different things. And I thought that that was very, like, a very interesting perspective on how to look at it, because nowadays our society is a very, like, quote unquote trauma informed society, right? Like, now everything is trauma, or everything happened because of trauma. You are the way that you are because of your past trauma or whatever. And everything is like trauma, trauma, right? Like, I don't want to traumatize my kids, and I don't want to trauma this, and yeah, just everything. Healing trauma, right? Like, everything is trauma based right now. So it was just interesting that he put it into that perspective, right? As in, like, it's our inability to deal with life. And he wasn't dismissing any mental illness whatsoever. He was just giving it a different perspective, right? Like, people who deal with anxiety, I'm going to throw myself under the bus here. So, people who deal with anxiety are very fearful people, right? Like, we fear the future, or we fear this. And so what we do is we tend to think of, like, every single, like, worst case scenario in our brains, because we think that by thinking of these things, we're going to somehow, like, know how to cope with it when it does happen. But about 99.8% of the time, all the things that we actually think about never actually happen. So, in other words, we are the ones creating this anxious feeling inside of ourselves when there truly is, like, nothing to be anxious about. And that would be, in his terms, our inability to cope with life, our inability to cope with the unknown, or our fear of the unknown, our fear that, like, something is going to happen. And we try to take control over that by thinking of every worst case scenario, right? um and I said this before in a different episode about, like, anxiety is a prideful sin. But anxiety is also like a sin of control, right? You want to control everything. You want to essentially take the place of God, because if you're like, well, if I think of all these different scenarios, then, like, maybe one of them might play out, right? But we always think of the negative ones. We always think of everything that could possibly go wrong, and we don't necessarily ever think about the things that are could possibly go right? And that is, I think, in context, like, giving it to God, like, giving it to God, because he's the one in control. And I just saw, like, an Instagram reel the other day. I was watching I was watching it with my husband, actually, and it was like this little boy, and he had a knife in his hand, and then he closed his palm over the knife, right? And he was like, you wouldn't pull this knife out just by, like, pulling it out, right? Like, he's like, the way that you would take your knife out of your hand is to open up your palm and then pull it out. And he was like, and that's what God means about letting it go and giving it to him. He's like, because if you have a knife in your hand and you close it and you start to pull it out, you're going to end up cutting yourself. You're going to end up hurting yourself. You're going to end up causing more damage. But if you just let go of the knife and hand that problem over to God, then there's no pain, there's no damage, there's no nothing. And that really just, like, resonated with me, because it's like, how many situations have we tried to hold on to, and we are pulling the knife out of the palm of our hand and just causing more pain, more hurt, more damage, because we're just unwilling to let go and give it to God. But for me, I think one of the biggest, like, ways that the Lord has revealed to me, like, where my anxiety was stemming from, and sure, society wise, you can blame it on the trauma, right? But it was my inability to cope with life. It was my fear. It was my fear of letting go and giving it to God. But it was also in a more, like, practical sense. It wasn't necessarily that I had an anxiety disorder. It was that my potassium was low, which was causing all of these different symptoms. It was that my blood sugar was dysregulated, which was causing all of these different symptoms. I've realized, like, when, as women, we go through cycles, we go through 30 and 31-day cycles, and things, like, fluctuate, hormones go up and down, right? And I started, like, pinpointing and calculating, like, okay, well, when is it when I feel worse, and when is it when I feel better, right? And it was all, like, basically the week before starting my period. which like I've been researching more on that, and it's some sort of like histamine kind of thing, like an allergy thing. And so like the more and more that I research it, it's like no, it's not that I one have to live with this quote unquote disorder for the rest of my life. It's just two that like I need to take better care of myself and my body and giving it things that I need to give it, right? Like the potassium, for instance. The low potassium, I don't know necessarily um where that came from, but the symptoms that it was giving me was sort of like fast heart rate, heart palpitations. It was making me dizzy. It was making me lightheaded. And I probably was dealing with low potassium for a really long time. But I always just thought, like, oh, it's just anxiety, right? Like, oh, this lightheadedness, oh, this dizziness, oh, this like headache is just anxiety. But it was never just anxiety. It was the fact that I just had low potassium. Um, and once I started to get those levels back up, then I started to feel fine. And then the whole blood sugar dysregulation, right? Like if I'm not eating, if I'm not giving my body what it actually needs, if I am not eating enough protein and enough fiber, my body is going to tell me, and it's going to give me anxious feeling symptoms. I start to get all hot and sweaty. I start to shake. I just start to feel like, I don't know, like head pressure. No, not really head pressure, but I don't know. My blood sugar hasn't dropped in a really long time because I have been learning to take care of my body. And like I noticed this, I noticed that those feelings were giving me anxiety and then throwing myself into anxiety attack, because the last time I felt it, we were actually gonna have dinner. I think we were at Chili's or something. I don't know. My kids love Chili's for some reason. But um I don't know. I don't remember what I ate for breakfast or for lunch, but it must have not been enough. Like it must have been not like sustainable enough for my body to get me through dinner. And I remember we went to Chili's and I started to feel it. Like the feeling of the blood sugar dropping, the hot, the sweaty, the feeling like I'm shaking, the feeling like, oh my goodness, I need to run, right? And those are all feelings or symptoms, I guess, that can equate anxiety, can equate like an anxiety attack, right? But what I told myself at that moment was your blood sugar is simply dropping because you're hungry and you need to feed your body. Once you eat something, you're going to feel fine. So, just give it a little bit, right? And I did, and I was perfectly fine. But back then, I would have given in to those anxious like symptoms, feelings, even though it wasn't necessarily anxiety. But because I was feeling them, then I would have thrown myself into a spiral and make it anxiety. Um, and so the fact that I was able to just stop and pause and be like, no, this is what's actually happening to my body. It's not what I think it's happening. And like this is like in factual what is happening to my body. And I was able to not spiral. I was able to deal with my life at that moment, right? My life of like, no, I just got to eat something. And once I ate, then for the rest of the night, like I was perfectly fine. And as I've been like researching, I guess more and more and more, right? Like I have realized that I probably have like textbook like OCD, what they call it, like obsessive compulsive disorder. And it's not the like needing to wash my hands 5 times before I eat, or the needing to, I don't know, lock my door 10 times. Like it's not that. It's more of um like a thought process OCD. I don't really know how to explain it. I don't know if there's like two different kinds. It's not like that I need to keep my house clean or I need to keep everything in line or in order kind of OCD. It's more so like I think that people are listening to my thoughts OCD, or I feel that like people are watching me like the Truman Show OCD. And I don't think I've ever said this out loud, but like that makes me sound like I'm crazy, right? Because it's like, well, what do you mean that you think that people are listening to you and that people are watching you all the time, right? Like, but that is something that I have dealt with for like ever, like forever. I can remember being a child and like thinking that people were looking at me through like my air conditioning vent up in my ceiling. Like that was how I lived my life. Like, so I would be in my bedroom just like afraid to do anything sometimes because I'm like, no, someone is watching me from there. And I think that that is a very like again, a very prideful sin, because it's like me, right? People are watching me, people are listening to me, people are looking at me, right? um and I don't want to feel that way anymore. I don't want to think that way anymore. And I think that that's why it's so important in scripture, where, it said, like, take every thought captive, right? Every thought captive, because sometimes our mind just likes to tell us the craziest things, right? Like the craziest things. Like, what do you mean you think that there's someone looking at you through your air conditioning vent in your ceiling? Like, and so that makes you afraid. And so you're in your bedroom just like trying to be as good as you possibly can so no one sees you doing anything bad. Like what do you mean that's what it is, right? But and I think that, like, the enemy uses these thoughts and uses these like compulsions or whatever to just continue to attack us, and we allow it. Like, we let him, because we're not just letting go and giving it to God, and we're not capturing all of these thoughts. So, like, I let these thoughts consume me, and then I let these thoughts send me into an anxious spiral, because I am just unable to cope with whatever thoughts my brain is putting in my head. And it's not as if, like, I am the one thinking these things. It's not as if, like, I am the one who wants to think these things. I guess that's a better way to put it. There's just like random thoughts that go in through my head, right? Like, I get the most random intrusive thoughts ever. And I know that intrusive thoughts are not facts, right? They're just thoughts that you have, and when you stop thinking them, they just kind of go away. But I've had very scary intrusive thoughts sometimes. And every time I've had them, I always open my Bible, I go to Psalms and I read a psalm, and I'm like, Lord, like, you know, you feel, you hear, my heart's anguish, the pain that I'm going through, that my brain is just playing tricks on me, that the enemy is just whispering these things in my ear, right? Because the enemy doesn't want me to remember that I am your child, that I am your daughter, that you love me. He wants me to think that I am small, and he wants me to think that I am not capable, and he wants me to think all of these bad things, because he wants me to think that I'm a bad person, and because I'm a bad person, it means that you don't love me. But that is not true. That is absolutely not true at all. So the enemy is going to continue to attack, and he's going to continue to attack with all of those thoughts, and he's going to make you think that you cannot cope with life. Jesus never said you might have troubles in this world. No, he says you will have trouble in this world. And we have a very sneaky enemy who is going to use absolutely everything, right? And absolutely any little outlet that he is going to find, even in your thoughts, even in your um your anxiety, even in the depression, even in the OCD, even in anything. He's going to make you think that you are not capable of living this life. He's going to make you keep thinking that you are unable to live this life. And it's the life that God has given you, right? Like, we just finished studying the book of Ecclesiastes, and it's basically like everything sucks. Everything sucks. um but just live your life, right? Like, and so I think that the enemy wants to keep us in the everything sucks, I can't handle this, everything sucks, I can't do this, everything sucks, I don't want to do this anymore, because it prevents us from just living life, right? It prevents us from just like our day-to-day tasks. It prevents us from just like showing the love of Jesus to others, because we're so stuck in ourselves. We're so stuck into thinking that it's all about us, or it's all about our feelings, or it's all about how we think, or it's all about how we want to be perceived. It's all about how we think others should think of us, or how we want others to see us, right? Like, it's all about us. And that's where the enemy wants to keep us. He wants to keep us prideful, so that we're so consumed in thinking about us that we don't have time to think about God, and we don't have time to think about others. So I would change MacArthur's statement of mental illness doesn't exist to mental illness is what keeps us away from God. Because the enemy likes to make us think that something is wrong and that because we're wrong, because we're bad, because we have these thoughts, because we have these compulsions, because we have these symptoms, because we have these feelings, that God doesn't love us. But that's absolutely not true. God loves you, and God created you exactly who you are and how you are. Um, and sometimes it's never just that, right? Sometimes it's something little and as small as go check your potassium levels, go check your vitamin D levels, your B12 levels, your B6 levels, your magnesium levels. Like sometimes it's just we're just not taking care of our bodies, which is fine, right? Like especially as like moms and stuff, like who has time to eat like a full meal? Like sometimes it's just leftover chicken nuggets. um but I pray, I guess we can go into prayer. Like my prayer for today is I pray that the Lord can reveal to you where you feel incapable of living your life, where you feel that you are not capable with dealing with whatever life has thrown at you. And I pray that you remember that God is in control. Stop holding on to that knife. Stop pulling it out without opening up your hand first, because you're going to hurt yourself in way more ways than you need to be hurt. Just open up your palm and give it to God. And I just pray that all of this just can be revealed to you, um, so that you can know, so that you would know where the enemy is attacking you the most and where you can invite the Holy Spirit to consume that part of your life. And I pray this all in your son's name. Amen. Today, I am learning to let go of thinking that I am unable to live my life, that I'm unable to deal with certain things, that I'm unable to just enjoy what the Lord has given me, because I am a new creation.